of our seminar in the spring term, and we start by something which might be called first night, namely with information on the Prague Dependency Treebank new release called Consolidated 1.0. As far as I understand, the two presenters will be Hajič and Hlaváčová, but there are two co-authors. In addition to these two, which is Mikulová and Barbora Štěpánková. So may I pass over the microphone, so to say, to Jan, who I hope will start.
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this ÚFAL seminar series, where we will be presenting the Prague Dependency Treebank, the new edition, which has some new properties in terms of volume and annotation, especially the morphological annotation, and we will show the new features. We will also show the new morphological dictionary that has been substantially updated within this project, but which is available also independently. And then we will show a little bit about the annotation process. As you can see, we are presenting this in English because we believe that there are colleagues outside of our country who are interested in the tree bank as well, and use it for various experiments. And we thought that it would be good to that they can understand easily what's new with the Prague Dependency Treebank today. Also, for those who cannot make it today, we are recording, so we would like to postpone questions to the discussion part. There will be ample time and space for questions, and those questions will then not be recorded. So for the talk itself, we will just talk, and then please remember your questions and ask them after we finish the actual presentation. So the talk is structured as follows. We will first talk about the consolidated edition of PDT, about the goals, what is now part of the PDT consolidated, what is the new contents, and how we can access it. Then Jarka will take over and we'll talk about the Morphological Dictionary of Czech and all the new features, the updates, and so on. And then I will take over again for the rest of the talk, and we talk about the process and the tools we have used for achieving one of the goals, which is the consistency of annotation of the new tree bank, and also the consistency between the tree bank and the new morphological dictionary. And then we will just summarize at the end. So the goals of the consolidated edition of PDT are, first of all, to get more morphologically annotated data. And I will show the numbers again in one of the next slides. Essentially, we wanted to double the amount, and we wanted to do it on data which already contain some annotation. Typically, they do have some elements of tectogrammatical annotation, the structure, valency, and some other attributes, but which have only automatically annotated morphology in them, and they also have automatically annotated syntax, but that's what we were not talking about now here. The other, and not less important, but maybe even more important, something which actually prompted us to start the project when we started it, was that there were more and more inconsistencies between the data and the morphological dictionary. The data has been updated for the previous editions, the PDT 2.5, 3.0, 3.5, the additions of additional annotation like multi-word entities and expressions, the discourse, and so on. And usually during that process, we also corrected some of the morphology. And also the morphological dictionary has been updated and extended, and in some cases changed in a way which was not really compatible with the data. And this is one of the big issues when you have two resources, not necessarily just data in dictionary, but often it is the case for dictionaries used for annotation, that any change in one induces changes and sometimes a lot of manual work in the other. So, so that's why we really had to consider this to be a project, a separate project. And I will show the timeline and the that it took a little bit later. Now, the morphological dictionary also had to be updated because sometimes the changes made in the past were not you know, consistent enough, sometimes internally in within the dictionary, sometimes against the data. And this was the place where we were trying to do sort of the common denominator of both the annotation and the dictionary, and trying to update it as well. This included some questions which were discussed previously, and for some of them there were actually solutions out there, but they were not really implemented or projected into the dictionary. So this was also a thing that that was implemented in the new dictionary. Again, there are many things which still remain. I will say that at the very end. But that's another new feature of both the corpus and the dictionary, because now these changes in the dictionary are also reflected in all of the annotation. So here are the promised numbers. So as you can see, the original PDT was almost 2 million tokens, and now it's about double that size. So we took the Prague Dependency Treebank on spoken Czech, which was annotated at the spoken level. There was the speech reconstruction and so on that's still kept inside, but the morphology on the reconstructed data was only automatic. So in this project, we changed that to fully manual annotation, and that added over 1 million tokens. That added about 750,000 of tokens. Then we had the Prague Czech-English Dependency Treebank and the Czech side, which is translated text, but represents a certain genre from the economy domain and sports and culture, but also has the feature that it's translation. It is very carefully checked translation, which was done during the development of the tree bank, because for the tectogrammatical annotation we really needed good translation. But again, the morphology layer was done only automatically. And then we had a small corpus called from the project Faust, which was never published independently, but it also contains tectogrammatical annotation, and we simply added the morphology for this one. I also mentioned inconsistencies. That was the other goal, to get rid of those, because if lately, I think the last 5 or more years, when people wanted to do something with the PDT at the morphological layer, it was very hard to use the morphological dictionary together with the corpus, such as for training part of speech tagging. There were many cases, over 30,000, with clear mismatch between the corpus and the dictionary, again typically caused by the changes in the dictionary. And we wanted to eliminate those, because people who wanted to use the corpus had to sort of manually force and not always correctly the consistency between the corpus and the dictionary. So this was the second major goal, and then of course by doing that we also discovered errors. There are still some errors remaining. Many of them have been caught when going from PDT 1.0 to 2.0 and so on, as I already mentioned. But still, and I'm sure there are even today, but we were able, by the tools that we used for checking the consistency, to discover many of them. And of course, there were dictionary errors as well, which, you know, some of them 30 years old, some of them newer, which we found that they need to be corrected. The causes were many. I won't talk too much about those. Jarka will say in much more detail about how the dictionary was updated to keep also the sort of the internal consistency, and to be able to document the dictionary much better than it was before. So we have a new documentation, and in order to write documentation, you like to have a clear definition of the features that are in the dictionary, and this was not always the case. So this was something that we had to change in the dictionary in order to have a nicer, clearer, and well-formed specification what actually is in the dictionary. So the actual numbers of inconsistency in the PDT, because of course the PDT was the only manually annotated morphology, so we can talk about data versus dictionary inconsistencies only in PDT. So there were 130,000 of them. 30,000 of them could not be corrected in any way automatically, and these had to be done manually. And I will talk about the process in the final part of the presentation today. Now, I will talk about the dictionary only very briefly. This is sort of just a teaser for Jarka to say exactly what was done. One of the things that was done in the dictionary was improve consistency. So sort of we unified the treatment of abbreviations. We sort of got rid of the unfinished features which should have described derivations, but they only did it partially or only for some of the entries. And we introduced consistent marking of some of those. Style features, foreign words were done in a very, very different way. We have a new part of speech for them and so on. Then we also had to check what we call the golden rule of the morphological dictionary and some other invariants which should hold across the dictionary. And these are important for anyone using the dictionary for technical purposes, so they are sure, which type of mapping there is, if it's one-to-one, one-to-n, and so on. So these invariants should help people, but they of course have to hold in the dictionary. So for example, one of those was an original idea in the dictionary to have a unique form for every lemma and tag. Now, this might sound strange to anyone who knows Czech, because we know there are variants, dubu, dubie, hradu, hradě, and so on. But these are variants which are marked in the tag. So once it is marked in the tag, and we have an attribute which marks those, then of course we should get uniquely to the form. But again, a careful analysis of the dictionary has shown that this was not always the case. Then again, we had some other invariants like single part of speech, the major part of speech for each lemma, one lemma for one paragraph, not duplicating paradigms and so on. Again, Jarka will tell you more details. There are some other things which we know they were used for simplifying the morphology at the beginning, but which everyone would like to have there, such an aspect. And of course, there are other things which we still haven't done, but aspect is one of the things that we actually tackled, and now it is in the output of the morphology, so that people can use it. That's there is a new, one of the unused positions in the paraspeech tag, in the full tag, is now used for verbal aspect. And then some things which were studied by other people and by us before, like segments, are now also implemented in the dictionary. Unfortunately, there was not enough time and workforce to implement everything. But for example, the famous X tag for the sort of sometimes unknown, but sometimes just variants in the case or number or gender have not been solved, and we will have to really look into this when we sort of start the new process of another update of the morphology. But nevertheless, we believe there was a substantial progress made in both the dictionary internal consistency and the consistency between the data and the dictionary. Here are some numbers about the dictionary. The morphological dictionary is the one which has or contains the biggest changes. We now have, including derivations, we have over 1 million lemmas. Out of which about 2/3 are derivations, the automatically created derivations from the base lemma, which is in the manually edited version of the dictionary. Altogether, this 1 million lemmas has 125 million triples, form, lemma, and tag, and they cover about 26 million different or unique word forms. So as you can see, the average ambiguity of a form is 5, because we have 5 times the number of forms is the number of triples. The number of tags also grew, and now it's 5,600. I used to say 4,500 now, and that concerns, for example, the new aspect value. There are 5,635 different tags. If you ask about how many really entries are updated, so you can see that the original number of lemmas was about 15,000 less. We removed 20,000 lemmas, which had one of the consistency problems, but added 35,000 of them. And the number of paradigms, meaning the sets of forms, which have been changed in one way or the other, was half of the dictionary, slightly more than half of the dictionary. Now, some of those changes were done automatically, but many of them have been done by hand. So you can sort of guess the amount of effort. Now, in the PDT-C now, there are still some words which are not found, which analysis is not found in the dictionary, about 32,000. This is in part on purpose. These are sort of strange words, and it might be useful for people who are trying to learn how sort of unknown words, which will be always encountered in new data, behave in terms of context and morphological analysis. Now, this update of PDT did not update the valency lexicon and both the Czech and English valency lexicons. Now, of course, the English valency lexicon is not included in the Prague Dependency Treebank Consolidated, because we do not include the English side of the parallel treebank, but this will come soon in the version of the parallel treebank version 3.0. Now, all the lexicons are also available separately because sometimes we can release them under less restrictive license than the corpus itself because of the original text copyright. Here is a nice table which shows sort of the history of all the treebanks that eventually now made it into the PDT consolidated version. So as everybody knows, we started with the Prague Dependency Treebank in about 95 or 6. We started with morphology and the surface structure. The first release of Prague Dependency Treebank was just that, even though we already started annotating the tectogrammatical structure. And then we went on, and there were many other features have been added to it, and the various releases in 2006, 2013, 2016, 2018, and now finally of the consolidated version. Now the parallel treebank, the Czech-English Dependency Treebank started later. As I said, the Czech side is actual translation made by us or by our translators. So we started early. We used a smaller version for the Hopkins workshop in 2002, and then the first edition was 2004. The real edition with all the parallel data from the Wall Street Journal was in 2012. Then references were added, and now it's part of the PDT-C, but only the Czech side. The speech corpus was to demonstrate so-called speech reconstruction. I won't talk about that, but that was the original purpose. But we also wanted to have the full PDT style annotation. So now we have both the deep structure and morphology. Again, the surface syntax is still only automatic. In Faust, we did the deep structure for the purpose of the Faust project, and now we have added morphology as well. So PDT consolidated has manual morphology all across the board. Oops, sorry. Oh. So now it is. So as I said, it is what is true is that the annotation of morphology is manual across all treebanks. The only other thing, and morphology means lemmatization and tagging. The only other thing which is sort of across all the tree banks is the deep structure, the tectogrammatical structure, the function, and valency. Some other things are available as well. For example, like co-reference for the parallel tree bank and for the spoken tree bank, both grammatical and textual. But some other things are still only available in the Prague Dependency Treebank part. Now, of course, the speech-related features are only available in the spoken corpus, and translated text, of course, is only in the parallel tree bank. So this is also part of the documentation. This is something we haven't had before so clearly marked. So we hope that anyone using the corpus will have much clearer picture of what can be used for any kind of NLP tool or processing or learning from the corpus. So on top of simply downloading the corpus and using it for various machine learning experiments and building tools, we also provide access, and that has been also extended during this project. So the obvious thing is to open the supply data, which you can download and open it locally in Thread. So this is also based on the download of the data. Then you have to install Thread, and then you can simply look at the data. Now, all of the tree banks are represented in Thread, except for the speech layers in the spoken corpus, and those have to be viewed in a different editor, which was originally used for annotating the spoken corpus, which is called MET. In the documentation, there are now updated instructions how to download and install MET. The MET can be used for editing, but also just for browsing and also for playing the audio. We still haven't integrated the audio into Thread, and neither to the other tools, but we will do that hopefully as well. So in the future, people should be able to play the audio also directly when looking at the structural annotation, the surface and deep syntax. The new feature is that now the PDT-C, the whole PDT-C, is available in TEITOK. I hope that you know what TEITOK is. There was this tutorial in how you know how TEITOK is being used, what it is good for, what are the differences between TEITOK and, let's say, Kontext or the other tools. So now, so this is just an example that in TEITOK you can search based on various criteria. You can browse the corpus very easily based on the text type, the year, the corpus, and so on. You get some simplified but useful view about the annotation, and you can still have the full sentences, but you can also display the structure all in the same interface. So you see one screenshot on the left, which shows the trees, the analytical trees, and part of the tectogrammatical below that, and also on the right-hand side, the sort of the simplified textual search in all the Czech corpora in Prague Dependency Treebank. Of course, you can also open it in context. You can also display the tree as before. So the little icon on the left can be used for showing the tree, and you can search with using all the features of context. Now, of course, in PDT-C, it is nice in the sense that the morphology now for all the 2 million words is manual, as opposed to many other bigger corpora in which, however, the annotation is only automatic. Now, as usual, the complex annotation can be also searched by sort of the ultimate search tool, which is the PML-TQ, which can work on very complicated with very complicated queries to query, for example, the tectogrammatical and the surface syntax layers at the same time, and explore the relations, can get you statistics directly from the queries, and so on and so forth. So of course, all of PDT-C, meaning all the 4 original corpora are now available and you can search in them. Now, again, of course, you can only search the features which are in all of them, or otherwise you will get only some of them. Now, that doesn't mean that the PDT is not available. The updated PDT is also available separately in PML-TQ. And before I finish the introduction, let me show the timeline so that you get an idea on the effort. We started somewhere mid-2016. We were looking for, we have to sort of say which corpora we will be adding, what will be the goals. We also had to look at the available tools, revive thread to write some new features for using thread for the annotation and so on. And then we actually and hire people, the annotators, and we actually started about a year later in 2017. And then we went through the annotation and dictionary updates with the core team, with the help of the 4 people I mentioned which were on the title slide: Milan Straka, Ondřej Bejček, and Honza Štěpánek, and also later with Jiří Mírovský, who was preparing the publication. So at the peak time, we had 14 people, not everybody full-time, of course, but this was the count, including the annotators who actually worked on it. We finished the annotation at the end of 2019, and it took about a year to actually, by using the checking tools and looking at some of them manually and making corrections in both the dictionary and the data, to arrive at the final version. Now you see that was in November 10 last year. We know exactly the time because we had tools which have shown actual 0 inconsistencies in the corpus at exactly the time. So, and then it took about 2 months to package it, thanks to Jirka Mírovský mainly, and everybody from the team who were preparing the documentation, the web pages, and so on. So this is all from me, and now I would like to pass to Jarka, who will tell you about the new dictionary.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's my pleasure to introduce to you the new version of our morphological dictionary, Morflex. And thanks to Professor Hajič, I don't need to repeat any introduction, and let's go directly to the point. This slide summarizes the main improvements of our dictionary, and I am now going to guide you briefly through all of them. I will start with a short story. When my teacher at school gave me a task to assign a part of speech to every word in a sentence, I had never problem. And I had no problem until I tried to do it with a real sentence, not with a sentence from an exercise book. I dare to say that maybe every second sentence, especially in journalistic genre, contains a word that doesn't fit to any traditional part of speech. And that's why we implemented these 4 new parts of speech. Foreign words is a word that is not subject to the Czech inflectional system and usually has no meaning of its own in Czech. The lemma of foreign words is the word itself, and we add index 77 to the lemma because we want to distinguish possibly homonymous Czech words. Maybe some of you already noticed that there are examples of foreign words and not foreign words, and both examples contain the same word, agent. That's because of that homonymy, as I have already mentioned. Agent is a Czech word with Czech inflection, but if such a word that comes from other language appears in the middle of other foreign words, this is the third condition here in this box, It is also assigned by the part of speech foreign word. Thus, we have foreign words that can also be parts of Czech vocabulary. Segment is an incomplete word. We distinguish prefixal segments and suffixal segments. All of the segments are such parts that are complemented in the same sentence or the same phrase by the end or the beginning of it, and to be a complete word. You see the examples of prefixal segments on the left column, and prefixal segments has the lemma always the same as the segment itself, as the word form itself, and it has also always the same morphological tag. It is different from the suffixal segment because suffixal segment is usually an ending or part of an ending, and as such, it is reasonable to be assigned something else that this particular word form. You can see it on the example, on the two examples here. For instance, if we have suffixal segment ko, which complemented with the beginning of the word, it gives the word form manželkou. Its lemma is ka, because of the lemma manželka, and the tag of such a word form, starting with the second position, is the same as would be the tag of the word form, of the full word form that was created by the suffixal segment. The suffixal segment contains all the inflectional categories that describe the whole word form that are filled in the tag. Isolated letter is a strange part of speech, but it appeared that there is quite a lot of occasions where authors write a single word to mark almost everything in a real text. Because it is not possible to assign it a traditional reasonable part of speech, we decided to create a special part of speech for all single letters of the Czech alphabet, including H. The tag is always the same, and the lemma is the word or the letter itself, and it has index 33, again, of the homonymous, reason of homonymy. Abbreviations are very strange entities and have very diverse features. We distinguish 3 types of them, but only 2 of them belong to the new part of speech. I will start with abbreviated word forms. They are not special part of speech. They are part of a paradigm of a normal, let's say, normal lemma. You can see it on the green example on the right. The lemma matter has normal paradigm, but we edit the abbreviated word form M to the same paradigm of the whole paradigm of matter. The tag of these abbreviated word forms has the usually same morphological categories as the lemma, but whenever it is possible, some of the categories are subspecified. In the case of matter, it is case and number. And the fact that it is an abbreviation is marked at the 15th, the last position of the morphological tag, by the letter B. Later, we discovered that there are more abbreviated word forms for some lemmas. So we added the letter letter A, sorry, and we found one word, one lemma in the dictionary where we needed even the letter C. And it is the quiz for all of you to find out if you can guess which lemma, the Czech lemma, needs 3 letters for marking the abbreviation. You can share me your tips in the private chat. Let's go back to the abbreviations as the new part of speech. There are two types of them. There are common abbreviations that have single meaning. The examples is in the red box. And abbreviations with no single or clear meaning. These are abbreviations that stand usually for more, sometimes many entities. And these two sort of abbreviations differ in lemma. The first, the red example shows that the lemma is accompanied by the semantic comment, which is necessary to add whenever we want to have such a form, such a type of abbreviation. And abbreviations with no single meanings don't need, in fact, they cannot have any explanation, but they have to be accompanied with an index 88. Both texts for the text of the new part of speech abbreviation is always the same as is shown at the examples. Verbal aspect, I think there is nothing to add. We have used the 13th position of the tag to mark the aspect. Maybe I would say that only verbs are marked with aspect, not any derivatives. Maybe later, but for the time being, it is only for verbs. Aggregates are word forms created out of two or more words squeezed into one word form, and it is usually not possible to classify them with a single part of speech. In the new corpus, SIN 2020, released by Institute of the Czech National Corpus at the end of the last year, aggregates are described by means of multiple lemma and multiple tag. As the Czech language is not very rich in aggregates, it was possible to design another means for that tagging, which we used. We believe that it is equivalent with the multiple lemma and tag approach. We distinguish three types of aggregates. Pronominal aggregates are made out of a preposition and a pronoun so or on. The lemma of pronominal aggregates is always the pronoun, and the tag is the same as would be for the pronoun. The only distinction is the 14th position that was empty until now, which contains the initial letter of the preposition with which the pronoun is connected. Then we have verbal aggregates that are created by almost any word, and the term sim. Again, the lemma of such aggregates is the main word. It is the main. It is the word that stands at the beginning of the aggregate. The tag is the same as for the original or for the first word form, and the fact that it is an aggregate is marked at the 14th position, which contains the letter S. Sort of exception are two conjunctions, abe and debe, for which we had to use other letters to mark that they can be sort of conjugated. I don't know that conjunctions should not be conjugated, but in fact it is something like that. And then we have combined aggregates that are combination of pronominal and verbal aggregates. Everything what I have said about pronominal aggregates is valid, and the fact that it is combined also with a verbal word form is marked by the uppercase letter of the preposition. I should say that pronominal aggregates and combined aggregates are in a closed set. It can be listed, while verbal aggregates they are unlimited. Variants are another feature of language that causes problem for morphological annotations. We distinguish two types. The global variants, or we can also call them full paradigm variants, manifest themselves in all word forms, and that's why we have to have different lemmas for them. It is convenient for users to link the variants, and we adopted the solution with a central basic variant, to which other variants are attached by means of special formalism. These are the blue parts of the table below. The inflection variants, or so-called word form variants, they differ in endings. For their distinguishing, we use the 15th position of the tag. These are the red parts of the table below. And the strict differentiation between the two types, global and inflectional variants, enable us to properly represent combination of those variants. It is represented by the violet word form citronama, and you can see how such word form can be described by using of both forms, both types of variants. The last part of my presentation touches the principles ensuring the consistency of the dictionary. It must be noted that the original dictionary was in several aspects not consistent due to many reasons that Professor Hajič has mentioned before, but also some sorts of consistencies were redefined. So it was not only because that everything was wrong. Golden rule of morphology says that any combination of lemma and morphological tag must not be represented but by more than one word forms. In fact, I touched this problem when I was talking about variants, and fulfillment of the golden rule led to the variant distinction. Here you can see another examples. For instance, if we had the lemma start and we wanted to create first person present of that lemma, there are 3 word forms. And the golden rule of morphology interdicts this. That's why we need to distinguish the lemma by means of indexes. This is in this table. The tags are the same for all the word forms, stanu, stojím, staju, but the lemmas differ. Similarly, we have for the lemma less, if we want to create locative plural, there are 2 word forms, but there are only these and no others. So the lemma can stay the same, but the morphological tag has to be different. Principle of morphological differentiation says how to treat homonymy. It can be divided into sub-principles. One of them is that one paradigm should contain only unique parts of speech. That's why homonymous lemma of different parts of speech should be differentiated by the index given to the lemma. Similarly, unique verbal aspect. It is not possible to put into one paradigm homonymous verbs with different aspects. And there is principle of unique gender of nouns that causes the division of paradigms of lemmas of nouns with varying gender, which is maybe a bit problematic principle, but it is valid throughout the whole dictionary now. And the last principle of unique paradigms says how to treat polysemous lemmas. There cannot be the same paradigm with different lemma in the dictionary, and it is not for the time being. So we can distinguish Kohoutek 1 as a bird and Kohoutek 2 as something other, because but we don't differentiate this, their meaning. That it can be Květina, Uzavě, it can have much more meanings, but it is still one lemma and one paradigm. There was a long discussion how to treat with derivations, because some of the meanings within the same paradigm can lead to different derivations. It is the example of the lemma matka that is the same, that has the same paradigm for both or maybe even more meanings, but only one of them, in the sense of mother, can derive possessive adjective matchin. But after these discussions, we decided that we will not take regard to the derivational behavior, and there is only one lemma whenever there is the same paradigm. I think that's the last slide, and I will pass the word back to Professor Hajič.
Okay, so I hope you can hear me again. So at the end of this presentation, we would like to show how the whole process of the morphological annotation. Now I won't talk about the dictionary, but about how we applied the dictionary and the discovered inconsistencies onto the previous annotation of the PDT and onto the 3 new parts of the corpus based on the 3 different previous tree banks. So this effort was led by Maria Mikulová. Also, the slides come from her. So there were these two tasks, slightly different. In order to have a consistent annotation across the whole PDT-C, we had to check the PDT, which already contained morphological manual annotation, but which, as I said, was inconsistent in some cases in the first place, and now after the changes in the dictionary would be inconsistent even more. So these almost 2 million tokens had to be checked. Originally, we planned to only look at the inconsistencies which could not be solved automatically, like having a single analysis in the dictionary apparently consistent with the original annotation. That could be done automatically, but there were these 30-something thousand tokens which could not. But because of the so many changes in the dictionary, we ended up actually checking the whole of PDT. So the PDT was sort of re-annotated in full and checked against the final version of the dictionary. And then the other task, which was clear that it will need full pass through the corpora, was the manual annotation of the other 3 corpora. In that case, we actually used MorphoData for pre-annotation. Of course, MorphoData with using the current version of the morphological dictionary, and then in the end, also the final version of MorphoData with the new dictionary for checking that annotation if there are completely consistent things between the corpus and the dictionary. And this is again about almost 2 million tokens which have been annotated sort of from scratch. By from scratch, I mean that they have not been annotated manually before. You might wonder, but we have actually used the thread tool of all things. And whereas thread tool was originally designed for the structural annotation, for annotating, in fact, it was used for the tectogrammatical annotation of the PDT at the various stages, because I mean, some of you might remember that actually for the surface dependency annotation, we have used another tool actually developed by Michal Ksen, and that was used for the original syntactic annotation. But then for the tectogrammatical one, with all these attributes and more features, we eventually developed thread. And now thread, because it's sort of easily programmable and customizable for other tasks was also used even for the morphological annotation, because that was sort of the easiest to do instead of designing or adapting the original tools that were used for morphological annotation in the 90s for this task. So, so we have used thread, and you see how it sort of looked like for the annotator when they were presented with the pre-checked corpus. So so if a word appeared in black, that meant that that's something that the annotator should look at, because that has multiple analysis in the dictionary, and there will be some decision that the annotator will have to do. If the word is in a greenish color, then it means that there is single analysis in the dictionary, and it only needs checking whether all is fine and whether it can be simply confirmed that that's the good analysis. And then in red, there were the words which had no analysis in the dictionary, and again, that could be for different reasons, and of course people could select that. There was usually the original annotation, but they had the choice of selecting one of the possibilities, and those possibilities were also displayed, as you see in the lower part of the screen. They had the choices similarly color coded for deciding which one is actually the correct one, and similarly they could also edit everything they wanted, because there could have been cases where they would have to edit everything because it was either not yet in the dictionary or not at all in the dictionary. So the annotators had full control over how to do it, and they had instructions what to do in each of those cases. So the show of the various analysis of a given word, like in this case, you see the word poroste in the corpus, and the choices are in this little window where the annotators were asked to select the lemma and the tag, and the color coding was as follows. So the black ones are analysis from the original dictionary. The green one is the one recommended by the tagger, by Morphodita, and the red ones are the analysis that were added by the annotators now or earlier, so that they know that this was actually seen by someone, human. So there was some kind of guidance, but of course the instruction was they had to check all of those possibilities. And this word, as you see, is quite ambiguous, and we also had to confirm what is the current status of the dictionary. We had an internal version of Morphodita, which worked with a daily updated dictionary, the Morphological dictionary. And this was always updated during the night. And the next day, people could check all the immediate changes that were done up until the previous day, and check whether these analyses are consistent. Especially the previous manual annotation might not have been consistent with the current state of the dictionary. So this was another help for the annotators to see how what could be the correct what would be the correct tag. I mean, still, of course, the current version of the dictionary might not have been completely correct, so then they still had the chance to actually correct it in some way. So you see that the lemma, that the word form poroste has actually 3 different lemmas, and then of course they would understand from the analysis which one to choose. The consistency it's a problem with every manual annotation. Even if we consider that the dictionary is fixed, which was actually not in this case, we had to run the consistency checks again and again because of changes in both the dictionary and the corpus. But now, even if we look at the dictionary as fixed, then of course the consistency within the corpus is also not non-trivial thing. So we had tools mostly written by Milan Straka, which classified the inconsistencies, and that helped us as well as I mean, mostly us, because the annotators had their own set of rules, but it helped us to look at the results and see where the problem could be and whether it needs a change in the corpus, in the annotation of the corpus, or whether it needs to change the dictionary in the end. Some of those changes could have been made automatically. This is about the 100,000 things that were discovered inconsistent in the original data, but it changed during the lifetime of the project because of the new changes in the dictionary. But every time that we know that there is a unique tag for a given form, it has been checked in the dictionary, especially towards the end of the project, then we can be reasonably sure that this is something we can replace automatically, such as the aspect in the tag or the new parts of speech for abbreviations. And then we had have checks for both the dictionary and for the data. So, for example, a typical check on the dictionary was, as Jarka presented, the principle of not splitting a lemma, even if it is polysemous, but if the set of forms and the associated tags is identical for both these polysemous meanings, then we only keep one of them. That was the case of the Kohoutek number 2. And this is easy to check in the dictionary. So every time we have seen two identical paradigms in the dictionary, but different lemmas, we sort of raised a flag and it had to be corrected in the dictionary. And then, of course, there were other inconsistencies in the data, which we had to check, which went as far as checking the so-called comments. That's a thing in parentheses that some of the entries in the dictionary contain, such as to distinguish these single meaning abbreviations, as Jarka has mentioned, which actually had to have some comment part, and so on. So these checks have been run not daily, but very often, especially towards the end of the project, and the statistics were coming out, and the concrete positions in the data were could be then opened directly in the data by using thread, and then the decision has been made whether how to correct these, or whether to do some more checking in the dictionary to have the internal consistency and so on. The fact that we had this automated allowed us to do actually more changes than we would normally do, because otherwise we would be very careful not to change anything in the dictionary, because we say, oh, now how we can find it in the data, how can we check the data? But these automatic checks allowed us to actually be sort of more pushing for the consistency in the dictionary, because we knew that if we make some problematic decisions, that they should surface by running these tests again. So here are here is the final numbers. So we have 0 types of inconsistencies, both those which could possibly be corrected automatically, so they were all corrected automatically, and the ones which would have to be done manually. So we have 0 of them in the data. As I already mentioned at the beginning, we actually have a number of forms, less than 1% in the corpus, which have no analysis coming from the dictionary, but they do have, of course, manual annotation in the corpus, but this one could not be checked against the dictionary because there is simply no such entry. As I said, these demonstrate sort of so-called unknown or out of vocabulary words, which might be advantageous to have at least some of them in the corpus for various technical reasons. Now, in the dictionary, if there is a lemma, its paradigm is complete. Now, by complete, of course, we might mean different things. What we mean by complete, that there are all the forms that sort of belong to the paradigm, like in the regular case. So if we have an adjective, we have all the possible forms of the adjective, even though we might not have seen some hard to see variants like vocative of superlative, in neuter, and so on. But these are all there. Plus, there are forms which might not be obvious for that given lemma, but which were found in the annotated data or in other sources, like the grammar books based on which actually the dictionary was originally created, or those we could consult. And so this concerns mainly the alternative forms, colloquial forms, or any other variants which might or might not be actually orthographically correct, or which would fit the Institute of Czech Language guidelines, but which simply are present in the text. So this is all about the annotation process and the results. So we have got a larger and consistently annotated Czech corpus for morphology, consistent with the dictionary. So no longer there is a need to write hex to make the corpus consistent with the dictionary if someone wants to use the dictionary for any machine learning experiments on the corpus. We have updated the morphological dictionary, which is now also more consistent and more regular sort of inside. We have created additional documentation. We have a technical report and as the new description of the morphological annotation and the morphological, which also applies, of course, to the dictionary, not in the technical sense, but in the description of how it should be applied to the annotation. We have new web pages for all the individual corpora, and also for the new consolidated version, where people can find various links to additional resources. We have published the lexicons also separately, again with additional documentation for each of them, including the valency lexicons. We have updated the credits and acknowledgements. We have researched who helped us with the translation and so on. So we hope that we have now, really hopefully we haven't forgot anyone, at least in the credits, and also the same for the acknowledgement of support from the various grants and projects that gave us money for doing also the previous annotation. This new stuff was done from Lindat, but the previous was done from many other funding sources. We have extended the searchability of the corpus. We have now the whole corpus searchable in Kontext, PML-TQ, TEITOK. We have the morphodata, hopefully updated soon with the new retrained on the larger corpus, and we have new extensions for thread, and we have updated MET so that anyone can install it and enjoy the speech reconstruction with manual morphological annotation and the audio which goes with it. So what is next? Well, it's one line on the slide, but I think it will be, again, at least 5-year projects for the future. Of course, we first of all, we want to add syntax, manual annotation of surface syntax, the so-called analytical layer, the same way as we added the morphology. It might or might not be simpler. We will see how it goes. There is no lexicon to go with, so we will have some issues to worry less about. But of course, either at the same time or later on, we want to return to morphology and do the expansion of those X's and Z's and in text to have it similarly to what some of the corpora in the Czech National Corpus have. And of course, while doing all this, we want to keep the consistency of the annotation. And of course, we will be happy to add any other annotation that people might do, especially on this, on the sort of the semantic layer, to add stuff which is maybe not in all the corpora, to add it to them, or add even very new things to it. So that's all from us. Thank you very much for your attention. And now we will be happy to answer questions.